started FLAG, which means Free Legal Aid Group, which helps juveniles who are on the wrong side of the law. Ma'am, you are an inspiration for the first generation law students like me, as your journey really proves that through hard work, one can really achieve heights in this field, irrespective whether you are a first generation or a second generation lawyer. Thank you for gracing us with your presence, ma'am. Talking about our chairperson, Professor Dr. Sarabjit Kaur, ma'am. She is a professor at Law Center 1, Faculty of Law, DU. She did her PhD from Faculty of Law, DU itself. Her teaching and research specializations include administrative law, judicial review, constitutional law, law of specific torts. She is also a chief editor of the Journal of Law Teachers of India. She is known for her deep expertise in administrative justice, constitutional law, and her academic leadership within Law Center 1. She has also published various journals in national and international journals levels. Talking about our expert, Professor Dr. Anupama Goyal, ma'am. She is a professor of law at NLU, Delhi. She obtained her PhD from Punjab University, Chandigarh. Her thesis was titled Social Justice and its Implementation with special reference to the state of Punjab. Before joining NLU, Delhi, she taught at the Department of Laws, Punjab University. She teaches a wide range of subjects like constitutional law, international law, interpretation of statutes, and torts law. As a researcher, she has published in leading legal journals, for example, Journal of the Indian Law Institute. She is a life member of the Indian Law Institute and a member of the Indian Society of International Law. She has also written about the role of tribunals in addressing judicial backlogs. Last but not the least, talking about our moderator, Dr. Ajay Sonavane, sir. He is an assistant professor in the Law Center 2, Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. He did his BSL LLB and LLM from ILS Pune and later PhD from Savitri Bai Phule Pune University, Pune. His academic interests include human rights law, administrative law, legal theory, jurisprudence, and constitutional law. He has published on human rights and legal theory. For instance, his work titled Human Rights During the COVID-19 Pandemic appears in the Journal of Campus Law Center. With great pleasure, I would like now to invite Professor Dr. Sarabjit Kaur ma'am to take the stage from here and further lead the proceedings. Please have a huge round of applause. All yours.
Professor Jay Shankar Singh, Professor Anupama Goyal, Ms. Shobha Gupta, Dr. Ajay Sonavane, lauded colleagues, distinguished participants, and dear students. Namaskar, good morning. I welcome you all to the session on the Bhagavad Gita and the Constitution of India. It's indeed an honor and a privilege to be part of this academic endeavor. So I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. As our chief guest will join us shortly, we are going to start with the presentations. We have 21 paper presenters. So each paper presenter will get 3 to 5 minutes. Kindly stick to the time. My best wishes to all the worthy presenters. May we all leave enriched and enlightened today. Thank you. So we can start with first presentation now.
Thank you, ma'am. So just to start with the presentation, before we start with all the presentations, so first we will have around 3 to 5 minutes for each presenter that we have to keep in mind, and because of the number of presenters that we have. So to start with first, Shweta Gupta. Shweta Gupta, is she here? Shweta Gupta. Oh, acha, please.
Good morning, everyone. I, Priyanshu Parmar, with a paper on fundamentals of Bhagavad Gita and the Constitution of India, under the guidance of Dr. Arvind P. Bhanu, Additional Director of Amity Law School, Noida. Commenting on the heart, that's the Constitution of India, and the soul, that's Bhagavad Gita, feels a Herculean task for me as a student of law. So I'll just share the dilemma that I faced in a dialogue between Srimad Bhagavad Gita and the Constitution of India. I hope you'll all connect with it. When I started reading the original text of the Constitution, signed by all the members of the Constituent Assembly, beautiful artwork of Nandalal Bose showcasing scenes from Mahabharata proved the importance of ethos of Bhagavad Gita in our law and the minds of the lawmakers. The first question that arises in our mind, why only Bhagavad Gita? Because it's a pivotal text of the Bhakti revolution that democratized the spiritual life forever. Then why even after 75 plus years we feel the chaos? Dr. B.R. Ambedkar answered it. Constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment. It has to be cultivated. Now the question arises, how? Gita guided me. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana karmafal hetur bhurma te sangas tyakta karmani. So fundamental rights and fundamental duties are correlated. Your duties are someone else's rights, and your rights are a product of someone else's duties. But I follow my duties, still bad happens only with me. Why? Gita told me, Shriyan Swadharmo Viguna Paradharmat Sunishtatat, the philosophy of Lok Sangraha, in the words of Adi Shankaracharya. The wise act not only for personal gain, but for Lok Sangraha, the welfare and guidance of all humanity. This paved the way for balancing the trinity of fundamental rights, DPSPs, and fundamental duties. But what if the state fears me? Gita answers it. Dharma, its modern equivalent, rule of law. And Krishna reassured us, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharatah abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyam. Paritranaaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. It seems like judiciary as Krishna comes to our rescue through judicial review by basic structure doctrine of Keshwananda Bharati case. It seems like Constitution is calling all of us Sarva Dharman Parityajya Ma Mekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarv Papebhyo Mokshayishyami Ma Shucha. Former Chief Justice of India R.C. Lahoti explained this. Do practice and profess your religion, yet surrender to me as I am religion of all religions. Unconditional surrender to the command of the Constitution rising above narrow dogmas can resolve several issues like UCC. Gita has guided me on many more aspects. Even Gita can guide us through the prevailing pollution problem. As Krishna said, Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam maya pashyati. If we all connect with this environment the way Krishna guided us, we'll all have a clean environment and a bright future. All we need is just to act. Thank you.
So next presenter we have Sairam and Chinta Krinda. Yes, please.
Talking about our expert, Professor Dr. Anupama Goyal ma'am. She is a professor of law at National Law University, Delhi. She obtained her PhD from Punjab University, Chandigarh. Her thesis was titled Social Justice and its Implementation with special reference to the state of Punjab. Before joining NLU, she taught at the Department of Laws, Punjab University. She teaches a wide range of subjects, which includes constitutional law, international law, interpretation of statutes, environmental law, and torts law. As a researcher, she has published in leading legal journals, for example, Journal of the Indian Law Institute. She is a life member of the Indian Law Institute and a member of the Indian Society of International Law. Her recent work includes research on limiting civil nature cases to reduce judicial pendency. She has also written about the role of tribunals in addressing judicial backlogs. Now, I would like to request Dr. Apeksha ma'am to please felicitate Professor Dr. Anupama Goyal ma'am. Please give a huge round of applause. Thank you, ma'am. Last but not the least, talking about our moderator, Dr. Ajay Sonavane sir. He's an assistant professor in the Law Center 2, Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. He did his BSL, LLB and LLM from ILS Pune and later PhD from Savitri Bhai Phule Pune University, Pune. His academic interests include human rights law, administrative law, legal theory, jurisprudence and constitutional law. He has published human rights and legal theory. For instance, his work titled Human Rights During the COVID-19 Pandemic appears in the Journal of Campus Law Center. He has served as a resource person in national webinars, for example, on issues and challenges of data protection, which was organized by Rashtra Sant Tukadoji Maharaj, Nagpur University. Now, I would like to request Dr. Bhavna ma'am to please felicitate Dr. Ajay Sonavane sir. Thank you, ma'am. Now, with great pleasure, I now invite our esteemed expert, Professor Dr. Anupama Goyal ma'am, to deliver the opening remarks and set the analytical framework for this important discussion.
Yeah, namaskar. I hope I am. Yeah. नमस्कार सभी को. जस्टिस स्वर्ण कांता शर्मा जी, प्रोफेसर जयशंकर सिंह जी, मिस शोभा गुप्ता, प्रोफेसर सरबजीत कौर, प्रोफेसर अंजू वाली टिकू, प्रोफेसर पिंकी शर्मा ji, and organizers of this conference, National Conference on the Relevance of Bhagavad Gita and Indian Legal System. I thank you all profusely, all the organizers, for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on Bhagavad Gita and how this is related to constitutional law of India specifically. So, heartiest welcome to all of you from all of us, all my colleagues, teachers, faculty, dear students. So, I'll not take much time. I have just condensed whatever I've thought. I thought for so many things, but I'll just make it precise due to constraints of time. I'll just, because I have heard 2-3 of you, and now I am just opening the session for you to think. I'll just say, let's just compare constitutional law of India with Bhagavad Gita. We left all these ancient literatures, our philosophy, our dharma, way back. After colonialism, we landed on the basis of Government of India Act 1990, 1935. And then we started with our constitution with that base. And I'm not saying that we are doing something wrong, but the situation was that maybe it was not possible, it was not feasible to go back. But definitely now I think it's time to revive our culture, our spirit, our ancient literature, and precisely it's the right time to think whether we are going the right way, whether we are made differently than the Western cultures, Western philosophies, and why we are suffering so much. I'll just give a precise data. Happiness index, if you see, we are very low. Out of 143 countries, we are at 118. And mental health issues, they are coming up so seriously. More than 15% of our population is suffering from depression or anxiety. Suicide rates are too much, and that too very much drastically increasing in the age group of 15 to 49. So young population is feeling it very difficult to cope up with the state of structures, with the state of laws, with the state of governance, what we are having. So I think it's the very, very appropriate time to think about why don't we should go back to see what went wrong and how to modulate it. And therefore, in this premise, I'll just give my thoughts on how and why now, after 75 years of constitutional independence, after the decision, we try to write everything in minute detail. Started with part 3, like rights, state will ensure no denial of equality before law, equal protection of laws. It will ensure my all kinds of freedoms, freedom to speech, movement, residence, occupation, trade. I should not be detained illegally. I should not be exploited. So many rights, and also the guidance to governance in part 4. And then suddenly we woke up in 1976, we added fundamental duties also. We tried to set things right, but I hope we will have to think again. Why I'm saying so? Because here, with the help of this constitution, everything, all kinds of reliance, all kinds of onus we put on the state. State, which we all know is an abstract entity, it is composed of us only, people only. We didn't pay any kind of responsibility, no leaning, no imposition, no duty on individuals. The whole onus lies upon state. Here or there, we are told our obligations, our duties, but definitely the kind of onus which was there in our ancient literatures, that is entirely different. Onus is on individuals, and that too, not only onus that you will have to do properly, you will have to perform as per the righteous conduct, you will have to do as per your dharma. And here dharma, when we say dharma, nothing to do with religion, please mark it. It's what I am supposed to do, how I am conditioned in a society, how should I be living, how should I be participating in a community. That's there, which is entrenched in our social conditioning, in our community setting, and in itself, in myself also, in all the individuals also. And see, many of you have already talked about I don't know Sanskrit much. So karmani vadika raste mahafaleshu kadachan, all of you. So my emphasis is that when I have given onus on individuals, how individuals should behave. And what is the second element which is given in core literatures of ancient India is how to mend my mind, how to condition my mind, because mind is the thing from which all kinds of good or bad actions they come out. And if I'm not doing things properly, automatically there would be civil wrongs, criminal wrongs, and then you can have a long list of wrongs, thoughts, and crimes. Everything comes out of my mind, and mind is the instigator of all my actions. I can do good things, I can do bad things. Mind is the regulator. And therefore, mind is becoming a basic problem in today's society. So mind, karma, mind is going to give me karma. Karma is the basis of whatever ancient Indian literatures are saying, and specifically Bhagavad Gita says. It says you should know your duty, you should know what is to be done and what not to be done, and how it is to be done. That is, Krodha Adhivati Sammoha, Sammoha Smriti Vibhrama, Smriti Vibhrama, Buddhi Nasho Pranayashati. So, if you will not apply your mind, you will be angry, anxious, you will be under delusion, and if delusion would be there, you will be bewildered, you don't know what is to be done, and your memory will be lost. If memory is lost, your intelligence will go, and if intelligence is lost, then automatically one will fall into disgrace, and disgrace is, they have said, that it's like death. So, precisely, just I want to say that what ancient Indian sages are saying, they are saying we'll have to. What is the role of king? What is the role of state? He has to ensure that there is enforcement and achievement of three varga. That is dharma, arth, kama. Dharma is, if everybody is performing your duties properly, conduct is righteous, automatically there would be welfare and there would be pleasure. Arth is wealth and kama is pleasure. So all kinds of spiritual benefits, material benefits, everything you will be able to get. So starting has to be from mind, regulation of mind, and this has also been said by Robert Lingat in his classical work, that why India is different from other countries, other jurisdictions is, Western specifically, they start from positive law. They start with sanctions. India never started with any kind of coercive element. We started with regulation of conduct. We entrenched it in our society in behavior, and therefore India is very, very different. Starting point is very different, and therefore the end point and result is going to be different. So I will not take much time, I have so much to say, but because other speakers are also there. So I'll just say the starting point, if it is right, if it is holistic, and the way Raj Dharma, the way the institutions were there earlier, there is not much difference. Now also we have three organs of state, legislature, judiciary and executive. Legislature, executive fused in parliamentary form of system. In Raja or king in ancient India, there used to be executive and judiciary combined, fused in Raja. But legislation has to come from above. It is Vedic, it is spiritual, it is divine. And what does it mean? I'm not talking about any spirituality or divinity. I'm just saying they are fixed. They are eternal. Some sages, some learned men, they have written it, and wherever there is some kind of loophole, lacuna, Raja would be able to give Raja Sasana, royal edicts, that in a very, 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 very difficult situation where he is unable to find any kind of Vedic hymn or divine dictate. So there was a rule of law, a better rule of law in ancient India, because the starting point was entirely different. But otherwise, we used to have all kinds of paraphernalia, all kinds of developed structures. In ancient India, only thing is now also we have, but we are leading nowhere. There is chaos all around. So we'll have to look for what can be done, how to modify the present structures, and not the present structures but ourselves, so that there is minimum of chaos, conflict, and we are developed mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you all.